Hello, and welcome to the Finance for Creatives panel for SDCC at Home 2021. My name is Karen Martin, and I'm with the Princess Project San Diego, and it is a pleasure and honor to be part of this year's panel. I'd like to first start off by introducing our panel guests. First, we have Mr. Sean Nisil, Certified Financial Planner, Neil Narvaez of Pro Tax Talk, Eric Atilano, Loan Officer with C2 Financial, Alonso Nunez with Little Fish Comic Book Studio, and Chris Neuhahn, a 5-time Emmy-winning animator, producer, and writer. And we'd like to thank, again, Comic-Con for having us this year. This is our 8th year presenting this panel. And in the last year and a half, the pandemic has so deeply affected our creative industry. And it's our hope that today's panel is going to be able to impart some financial insight and give some hope and light to everyone as we hopefully emerge and move forward. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over the floor to Sean Nisil.
Well, thank you so much for having me again. And, you know, coming from the world of financial planning, one of the things that really stood out to me as an advisor, whether it's working with a professional, entrepreneur in the business or a retiree, the last 12 to 18 months, it has been back to basics. And what I mean by that is that last year showed us that if you weren't prepared and you weren't ready financially, people just got hammered left and right, regardless of background. And so back to fundamentals means having something like an emergency fund. How much cash is in your savings account right now, in case something happens. Like last year, a lot of somethings happened. and what I recommend to folks is you should have at least 3 months up to 6 months of your monthly expenses just sitting there in cash in the bank. For folks like me who have a steady paycheck, 3 months is fine. For folks who are more project-based or oriented, money might be coming in ebbs and flows. 6 months would make more sense in those cases. And by having that, not only is it smart financially, but it also allows you the mental fortitude to be able to go out and get busy and keep your nose to the grindstone without worrying about, am I going to pay the bills? Because again, we all lived through it. Last year was hard. It was difficult. And so if you can give yourself some leeway, that's one, again, very basic thing to do, but it is something that takes discipline. You have to set that as a goal to facilitate that. So financial basics, 101, build a strong foundation. The other thing is kind of the opposite. On the business side, on the entrepreneurial side, on the artistic side, a lot of what we were doing before just stopped working. Up until the pandemic kicked in, all of my marketing efforts were essentially in-person, face-to-face, and guess what? That stopped. And so, well, on the one hand, hey, we want to have some rigid and some strict financial planning basics in place. The other side, we need to be very open-handed with and realize that what worked last year, what's been working the last 5 years that brought success may not work right now. And so having that mindset of, hold on to what's working, but be able to completely let go of things that maybe have been tried and true in years past, and experiment and, be willing to stretch yourself, be willing to get outside of your comfort zone, and be willing to fail and work through those growing pains. So, that's sort of that juxtaposition that I saw last year with the folks that I'm working with. And again, those who had planned, I'm a financial planner, so I'm biased. I always go back to what's the plan? And those who had planned during the good times were really able to weather out the difficult times without, completely blowing up lifestyle or budget or house or whatever it may be.
Thank you so much, Sean. Next, we have Neil from Pro Tax Talk.
Hi. Hi. Thanks again, Karen, for doing this. I'm going to keep mine kind of short and sweet and just hit a couple of topics here and I approach things from more of a tax-centric perspective, of course, being a tax professional. One thing, this is for kind of creatives out there, right? And one would assume the bulk of creatives are self-employed. One thing you want to be careful of, and something that's going to be on the radar of the IRS, at least anecdotally, that professionals have been hearing, is this concept of having a hobby versus a business. Like, what are you doing in your endeavors, be it writing, cosplaying, art, whatever creative endeavor you have. There's a delineation between, is this a hobby, or are you actually doing this to try to make money? Now, why does that matter? That matters in the eyes of the IRS because according to the law of the land, if you generate $1 in your efforts, if you make $1, sell anything for $1, you have to report that. That's taxable income. If it's a hobby, you can't deduct any expenses from that income. It's just pure income. If it's a business endeavor, if you're trying to make money, and we'll kind of touch upon what that means in a sec, now you are allowed, that opens up a whole slew of deductions for you and benefits for you as a creative. So how do you determine if something's a hobby versus a business, at least in the eyes of the IRS? If what you're doing, you're trying to make, well, first of all, you have to try to make money. That's the obvious part. And in the eyes of the IRS, there's a get out of jail free type of rule of thumb, where if you actually were profitable in 3 out of the past 5 years. If, for instance, in the past 5 years you've been, let's say you've been selling some art at conventions, and you are profitable 3 out of the last 5 years, the IRS will assume, hey, yeah, this is a business, and that's good enough for us. If you can't meet that, that doesn't mean to say that you don't still have a business. You just might not be the best business person and not necessarily profitable in the past 5 years. But if you are doing things such as showing that you have expertise in the field, that you're out there marketing your wares, your services, if you are actually relying upon the income from the sales of whatever you're doing, there are numerous factors here that will show, the eyes of the IRS, that you have a business. Again, why is that important? Because now, if you have a business, you can now deduct any expenses you have in generating that income, be it marketing, supplies, continuing education courses, travel to conventions, as long as it's a business related thing you're trying to sell your wares, and hopefully we'll be all going to conventions soon again. So that's the important delineation here between having a hobby or a business. Hobby, again, something you're just kind of doing for fun, and if you make a few bucks, that's great, but you're not necessarily relying upon that income. Again, if it's deemed a hobby by the IRS, they're not going to allow you to deduct any expenses. Also, another good thing with it being classified as a business is that if for some reason you have more expenses than income, you happen to have a loss in a particular year, you can use that loss and deduct that negative from whatever traditional income you might have, maybe a W-2 income or investment income. You could actually use that loss. Again, if it's a hobby, you can't do that. If you're running a business, you can. And another thing I'll mention, not necessarily tax related, but something touching what Sean kind of mentioned is being able to be flexible, take advantage of what's going on right now, to be able to recalibrate when the stuff hits the fan, as we all, again, you've heard ad nauseum as it's happened the past 2 years. And one thing you might want to, that I've had a couple of clients look into, and I'll have you do this, this is kind of beyond the scope of this panel. Look into, if you're an artist, look into NFTs, non-fungible tokens. That's kind of the new trend out there, and it's potentially lucrative. I've had a couple of clients kind of look into that, and they've made a little bit of coin on that. So something to look into. Again, NFTs, again, beyond the scope of this, but just a kind of a little tip from a finance and tax perspective. And with that, I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much, Neil. Next, we have Eric from C2 Financial. Eric, you have the floor.
Well, hey there, Karen. It's always good to be on the panel, and hi there, everybody else. I'm a mortgage expert. So if you're a creative in the industry right now and you're looking to purchase a home, this climate is a little challenging. I'll just put that out there. A lot of people wonder why. Some people know, but here's the basic fundamentals of why this market's really, really hot, and I'll share them with you. Number one, quarantine forced us to stay in our homes. So a lot of people, especially the boomer generation, they were fine watching interest rates go down so they can save the money on the house that they already owned. But those that were looking to buy did take advantage of that at the beginning of the pandemic. Where we're at right now, though, is a little different. There are not a lot of homes for sale because where are people going to go? All right. The inventory is very, very, very low. And if you were to sell your home today, doesn't guarantee that you're going to find the home of your dreams that you're going to buy next. So that's reduced a lot of selling and prevents a lot of shopping. Another portion of this actual result of the pandemic is the demand for housing is incredibly high. People are realizing that they don't want to live in a condensed metro area. They'd rather go out and buy the houses in suburbia, and that's fine. But unfortunately, the demand is exceeding the amount of homes available for sale. Let me give you an example. There's more realtors than there are homes for sale right now. That's nationwide. If you are a creative in the industry, and I know you work very, very hard for your money, you don't want to spend it on something that's not worth it, but everyone's making offers that are over the asking price. Here's my advice to you. You can buy a home and make an offer over the asking price. That's not money wasted, but you have to calculate the amount you're willing to pay. But you also have to calculate, or at least have a good idea of how long you're going to stay in this property. In order for you to make your money back, if you pay over the asking price, the real solution to that problem is time. Especially in Southern California, we're a microeconomy, but usually in a normal market, you would get anywhere from a 2 to 4% return on your property year over year. We're seeing incredible increases on value right now, 16% almost year over year, and sometimes within the last 30 to 60, 90 days. That's unheard of. But if you buy a house and you've paid, I don't know, $40,000 over the asking price and you think that I waste my money, no, because 10 years from now, that property value will more than likely appreciate to the value that you paid for it or higher, most likely a lot higher, and you'll be able to get your money back. Research though, and go ahead and when in doubt, zoom out. Look what happened in 2007 and 2009. Property values crashed, but they did reach a high. After the repair of the economy, all those houses that had a certain peak, which was the highest ever in the market, were no longer the highest because we exceeded that. And now we're even farther away from that. Now, over time, decade over decade, your investment will grow. It's just not going to grow year over year every single time. So just play that market a little bit. You want to invest your money appropriately. Find someone like myself who's a mortgage broker. Hang out with Neil, who's also a tax guy, as well as Sean. And make sure the money that you're spending is reciprocal. What that means is you're spending it in a place where you can get a little bit of it back, and owning a home does that.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's great.
Cool.
All right, we now are going to have our two creatives share a little bit about what's been happening with them over this past year. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Alonso Nunez from Little Fish. Alonso, you are on.
Thank you, Karen. It's good to see everyone again. I was just reflecting as Neil and Sean and Eric were talking that, it's kind of crazy to me that we did this panel last year also in a pandemic, right? And it is different in the sense that at the time it felt like the experience of me and Chris and then the advice from the three people with real jobs was along the lines of, oh my God, the waters are choppy. Here's how to not drown, right? And now it's like we can see the island, potentially the one that Neil's on, it's about navigating the best way there, right? This time last year, Little Fish was struggling, frankly, to kind of balance the closures of summer camps, the switching of in-person camps to virtual camps, and the financial cuts there, the canceling of spots by parents. This year is a little bit more stable, but like Sean said, the last 15 months has been a collection of a lot of somethings, right? And what I've really reflected on in the last few months, as knock on wood, the light is at the end of the tunnel, is taking stock of all the improvisations that were made, right, and which were temporary, right, which were a stopgap measure to kind of stop the bleeding or kind of course correct for a switch to a virtual environment, and then which were potentially a secondary revenue stream, to use financial terms for our creatives out there. Our virtual camps that we started last year, I kind of expected would fall away, but there was demand early this summer for virtual camps from other places in the country, right? San Diegans want to get back out, as do, of course, Virginians and Floridians and New Yorkers. But what Little Fish does, we're lucky enough that it's fairly niche. And so we've left virtual camps open, and the attendance is largely out of county, which is pretty fun, pretty fantastic, really cool to see. And I would those creatives that are still here, right? As you navigate into the still uncertain but at least more stable world that is the second half of 2021 and into 22, that would be my recommendation. Look at what you changed to hang on, and don't think necessarily this is a return to before. I've heard a lot of people say this, and I kind of agree with it, that there is no return exactly to what was before. It's we're always moving into a new market, a new future, a new set of variables, right? So look at what you did. Is it something that you can hold on to potentially? Is it a new market? Is it a new audience you found? Did you switch to virtual comics or web comics or digital comics, and you thought that was temporary, but now you're finding an audience, right? Really take some time to take stock of it. I know, speaking from personal experience, that it's been a little bit of a challenge to not constantly be in almost like this trench mindset, right? Where you're just trying to hold on, you're trying to make it one more day, right? You're looking, just day by day, maybe week to week, like Sean was saying, now is the time to really start building that savings up. I know I had this almost kind of traumatic reaction to the thought of planning, frankly, for savings again for Little Fish, aside from what was already there and just kind of collecting dust since March of 2020. As I looked at our incoming summer income, and I thought, well, I should put some into savings, there was this moment where I thought, no, but it's going to fall apart at any second, but you have to kind of recognize that fear and then still kind of embrace the future and find new pathways for yourself if they're there. I'll leave you with one anecdote. This is a tale of two comic stores. There is a comic store. I tend to frequent all the comic stores in San Diego. And one of them I stopped into early on in the pandemic when everything was shut down. None of us could go outside and shop. And they were closed down. And I knew he was there because he was, what's the phrase? Essential employee, right? He was the owner of the business. And so he's in there taking stock and, running payroll. And I said, well, how are you going to make money? What are your plans? And his response was, well, I don't know. And I thought, oh, that's, and this is after the stores closed. That was bad news. And sure enough, a month later, the store was closed. Meanwhile, I stopped into another store, and since this is the good one, I'll go ahead and spotlight them. This is Now or Never Comics, downtown East Village, San Diego. And I stopped in there and I said, Aaron, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I've already shifted a lot of my stock over to eBay. I've set up a store. I've got clientele. And so, for example, Aaron is now running 2 days a week his store strictly on eBay. And then the rest of his business hours are in store again. It's a fantastic store. It was before. It continues to be a fantastic store. But he's kind of adapted for the future, and it's great to see. So the future is bright. You just have to see. Let me see if I can find the right metaphor. Point your ship in the right direction to find that brightness. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Karen.
That was great. Thank you so much, Alonso. All right, Chris, you are up.
Hello, Chris, animation director, producer, writer. I think, like, I've listening to everybody, I've been trying to think what I can add that everyone else hasn't added. And savings is a huge one because regardless of whether you agree with the decision to shut everything down or not, someone flipped a switch and you were told you cannot work. And a lot of us were lucky enough that we were able to work remotely, but not a lot of people were. But I think even for us who work remotely, I think a thing that you can do in addition to savings and sacrifice what you have to get your savings up. But one of the things that we can do, because you can't go look for a job, you can't go to an interview, a Zoom interview is awkward, is networking. And I know it's awkward. Many of us artists are socially awkward in some form or another. I've managed to bust through many of those things, mostly through bravado that turned into real confidence at some point. But I think building your network in a natural way, not forced, and this is not really financial advice, but I got laid off last year, and because I had a network, I just posted on Facebook, hey, I'm available. And within a couple of days, someone I knew said, hey, I have this project that's starting up that you're perfect for. And if I hadn't been a network or built my network in that way and tried to keep in touch with people, and I know it's hard. We all have, the things that we're doing, especially if you have a family, it's easy to lose track of your other connections and stuff like that. But when someone now has the precedent that the switch can be flipped, it will be used again, and it's going to be potentially as sudden as it was last time. Whereas, if you have a project that's ending in a couple of months, you can say, all right, well, I don't need to go out and buy a steak tonight because I need to cut back a little bit. Or, if you get a 6 month or a year project, which is pretty common in my industry, you have to, you think ahead, but sometimes that 6 months can now become 3 months, and projects get canceled too. And it's an unfortunate thing in the animation industry. Almost everyone I know has worked on something that was, like, this thing is going to be awesome, everything, and then someone just goes, nope. My last gig at DreamWorks was co-directing on a feature that was for Chinese release, and the sale to NBC Universal happened, and they came in, looked at the slate of movies, and went, nah, we're not doing this whole chunk, we're done. And up until that point, I was like, all right, I'm directing a feature. It's my first one. And then it was like, no one is. No one's directing this feature. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. One thing on why the real estate market is so crazy, read a book called What the Government Has Done to Our Money. And you'll understand why the prices are going nuts more than just supply and demand.
Hey, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate everybody's insight on the panel. It was everyone had such great words to contribute. I'm going to switch us over back to the gallery view so that we can have more of a round table, even though we're in a bunch of squares discussion. But you know,
I have a question.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I didn't know if you had something to launch into the panel discussion.
No,
But one of the things that I had struggled with in the last, last 10 years, say, of getting to a position where I'm making a bunch of money and looking at debt that I had accumulated and then getting excited, paying all that off, but then not doing any savings and then losing a project. And then I'm like, oh crap, now I'm running up my credit cards because I didn't do any savings. And so it's been a thing of like balancing, going, okay, well, now I'm going to dedicate all my money to savings, but my credit card debt didn't go down. And it's something that I've been like going, hey, try to do something a little bit more rational and work a little at the same time. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Neil, or not Neil, but you can, Neil, you can join in too. Sean.
Yeah. Well, I think both Neil and I are CFPs. We're certified financial planners. And, one of the things I see all the time is we always talk about the bad stuff, right? But you also need a plan for success. So you work and work and work, you network, and finally you start to earn a good living and maybe have a windfall or two for those projects. And it's like a bucket of water that's being poured out, and you got to make sure you know where the water is going to flow to, right? And that really can only happen when you take time to sit down and essentially kind of make a blueprint. And again, I'll just kind of go back to the basics, right? So what are your goals? Short-term, midterm, long-term. What are your challenges? How are you going to tackle those? And it absolutely is a balancing act. And not just with the numbers, it's a balancing act with the emotions. Chris, like you just said, it's like, man, I've had this debt, this monkey on my back, and I just want to get that off, right? But then you have these uh-oh moments where, well, shoot, now I took my liquid assets, I got rid of my debt, and I don't have any cushion or margin. And so from my perspective, and Neil, jump in here, it's coming back to what are your priorities, what are your goals, and then, if you're working solo, lay out an action plan. If it's you and a significant other, bring them into the conversation as well, because let's use debt as an example. Maybe your number one goal is let's kick that to the can, but maybe theirs is saving for, buying a home or saving for retirement. So making sure that there's a plan, but also B, alignment for where you're headed.
And one thing I'll say that because it's a frequent thing that a lot of artists will have a job and then they'll get a freelance gig and then come into extra money. And as you can see, I do have some spending with my extra money issues, but it's another thing to balance that and go, okay, well, I remember this advice I had read for lottery winners. They said, take 10% of it and just blow it. Just don't try and be wise with it. Just get that out of your system. And I've sort of tried to do something similar when I come into extra money. I'll just go buy myself this little thing nice, but the rest of it's getting split between debt and savings.
I've got a little contribution I can throw into there, Chris, because you bring up a really good point. I deal with people that are either planning to buy a home or have planned, and there's so much expectation because it's such hard work to get to this point. And one of my clients recently was like, Eric, I just paid off all my student loans. Oh my God, it took me forever. And they were nervous that the actual balance of the student loan, let's just say it was 100,000, would have prevented them from buying the house. When I explained to them that banks are only concerned about the monthly payment to the actual debt right away, they understood then that, well, you didn't necessarily have to pay the whole balance off. You could have bought it down. Great, that's peace of mind. But if the bank is only looking at a $30 a month payment for that student loan, that's $100,000. That's all we're going to use for your affordability range. In answering that goal question of paying debt down and then getting a flush of money again and then having to borrow more, it's aligning goals with what the requirements are to achieve that goal. Is your goal buying a home? Great. How does a bank look at your debt when buying a home? So like I said, student loans are very malleable. I've had doctors and lawyers alter the actual monthly payment to their student loan because the IRS will accept that, or the student loan department will accept that. And they're like, look, if you can only afford $100 a month, you can afford $100 a month, that's fine, we'll accept that. Whatever that number is, just to keep the actual wheels turning. If you anticipate to make this big windfall in income 5 years from now, why are you spending 50% of your paycheck on that student debt? You don't need to. Live, save, keep your debt paid, but keep it manageably paid. Some credit cards won't do that for you, right? Some other debts won't do it. Auto is not going to alter it unless you refinance it, right? But as long as you keep consistent and you understand that your debt is a reflection of your integrity and you can make these payments, then you can do that. But it's knowing what's required out of that goal. What debts are there that you can alter to your favor without ignoring it entirely? I think that's important, because as we get that bill, a lot of us at least are going to go, crap, that's the monthly payment I have to make without negotiation. And today, especially after this pandemic, you'll be surprised at how much debt is negotiable. So you can still feel satisfied paying off an obligation while keeping some to yourself, and then having that equal balance. And there's a lot of pride that comes with building a savings balance. I've seen clients just go from one end of the pole to the next where they didn't think they had anything. They finally saved up a couple $1,000 and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do that. And you grow emotionally. We're tired.
They went and bought a guitar.
I plan on wearing this mask and playing music on street corners if this market keeps up. So.
Well, and Eric, I just have one quick thought on that, because your example highlights a fact that we see on the professional side all the time. And for those who are listening, just realize that we all have ideas and we all have assumptions about money. Eric just gave the example of this person who had this assumption of how that student loan debt would impact them. But guess what? Reality was completely different. In years past on this panel, we always talk about build your team, build your superhero team, right? Get people around you who can speak into your situation. And so it doesn't take long to ask a question. Hey, here's my situation. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's how I understand how that works. Is this accurate or am I off base? And having someone with experience speak into that, it can save you a lot of time. It can save you a lot of money. It can save you a lot of headache. And it can also help you get to, the lifestyle that you want to achieve, perhaps even quicker than you may have thought possible.
Yeah, Sean's accurate, because it wasn't just the actual student debt that he made an assumption on, but I also got the opportunity to educate him that with all the money he saved, he only needed a portion of it, because even if he put less than 20% down, he was still able to afford the actual monthly payment, buy the house he wanted, and keep a good portion of that savings or utilize that to pay more debt down. So he thought, I need 20% down and I need to pay this off. That's all he knew. And because he knew that so confidently, he didn't even try to ask if that was what was going to work for him. I was able to help him negotiate that student loan payment for a little bit of a lower payment. He still is on a growth path of his career where he could help make larger contributions down the road. But right now, if he didn't get in the market, he probably was going to miss that home. Someone else was going to buy it and he wouldn't have the home of his dreams. So he put 10% down, saved him a bunch of money that he didn't have to spend right away, so he could invest back in the home or whatever. And he reduced his overall debt by negotiating the payment on that student loan. So Sean's absolutely right. Get to know the actual details, and you might not have luck finding it on your own, so you do need a superhero team.
If I could just interject and just say, because this is all such fantastic information to share, having that trusted advisor is something that is so incredibly important. And I know we've talked about this in years past, but having a financial planner, having the tax person, you know, having someone that you completely trust to know, like Eric and Neil and Sean, I can't say enough about the value of that. Anyway, I had to put that in there. Just having that trusted team, 100% agree.
I have an anecdote that's somewhat related to Eric's story. Is when I bought my house, leading up to that, I had a brief time where I had close to 2 incomes for like a month. And it was great. I paid a ton of debt down. And then the house I was renting, they said, "Do you want to buy it?" And I went, yeah, I guess. I'm not even prepared. And although my credit score was going way up, I had very little money in savings, and I had a decent chunk of money in my corporate account, but because I was now applying for a loan, I couldn't move that. It was a whole big mess of like, I ended up having to borrow money, even though I had all the money for my down payment. I had to get a quote unquote gift for my father-in-law. So it was just a weird convergence of events that, had I just had normal savings and paid my debt down rationally, probably would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I just want to thank all of our panelists for the insight and information and the updates you shared since, again, last year, when it's been such a tough and challenging year for everyone. And the one thing, it's so important to me that I always want to say is that art is such an important thing. And the fact that so many creatives were affected and jobs were lost, with the hope that we're coming out of the pandemic and approaching in a new norm. I just wanted to say, I hope that all of the creatives really are able to take what was discussed here today to help yourselves move forward. And the other thing is also, it's been a tough 15 months for everyone in the world. And whether or not you were financially secure or not, mental health is such an important thing. And again, I brought this up last year and wanted to bring it up again. Be sure that you are taking care of yourself and, being mindful about self-care, and just, if you need help, seek help to talk to someone about feelings. And, I see in the future art having such an important factor for the world. And anyway, I just want to thank everyone for being on the panel. Is there anything else, gentlemen, that you would like to add before we sign off? Yes, Chris.
This would be the first year I didn't get to it if I didn't do it. I said it yesterday, and I'm going to keep saying it every year. If you're an artist, and I hire people all the time, I never look at their education. I look at what they do in their work. And obviously some fields you need to go to school, but if you're an artist, there's so many resources for you to learn, like Schoolism, digital tutors, there's the Society for Visual Storytelling, all have amazing classes, and you're going to pay like $200 a year instead of several thousand, maybe $20,000, $30,000 a year. That and an iMac and a Cintiq, if you're an artist, is all you need. And then you don't even have to talk to Eric about what you're doing with your student debt.
There you go. I love it.
Chris, and you mentioned that every year. I'm gonna put together a set of links and for the end of this panel recording that can be shared, and we'll include some of those, and hopefully some additional links and resources that will be helpful for our creative community. So
I have a job, and I'm on Schoolism and svslearn.com all the time, because they have such amazing artists on there that you would never have access to even going to school.
Wow.
That's great. And then I was going to say, Alonso, do you have any other recommendations also for young artists or young creatives or people who do want to learn as well? I'd love to throw up a couple links both from you and Chris about any recommendations as well.
One of the things I would say is, especially now when things are just starting to reopen, concurrent, right, with what Chris is talking about, which is just absorb everything and learn as much as you can, is get out there, right? It's not like there's some mythical point at which you are a professional and then you go as a comic artist to conventions or you start networking. Network as you develop. It's that old maxim, 70% of success is showing up. So show up, especially now that we've got comic conventions. Obviously, San Diego Comic-Con at home is digital, but they will have Comic-Con special edition, I believe it's the working official title, in November. Start planning for that, right? Start networking. San Diego is an amazing city for those of you here. Otherwise, we have this amazing connection of a series of tubes and wires called the internet. Find your local community, find conventions no matter how small they are, get out there, find your tribe, as I like to say, and grow together.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to the networking thing, it's important to network with people close to your level, because you might not be able to get time with somebody like me because at my level we're frequently working, but those people that are at your level, when they start getting jobs and they know you and they know your work, they can recommend you much easier than like just picking Brad Bird's name out of a hat and saying, "Hey Brad, give me a job."
That's great. All right. Well, gosh, again, I'd love to thank all of our panelists today for everything you shared, and also Comic-Con at Home for having us. And we just wish health and wellness to everyone, and hopefully look forward to seeing everyone in person next year. Thank you again, everyone.